Well, Finweek's cover story this week was made with happiness in mind. Google has made the world rethink employee relations, and it would appear that employee happiness is becoming ever more important for the world's leading organizations. Finweek uncovers that the secret to a killer workforce is, in fact, happiness. So we've got Jessica Hubbard from Finweek, Richard Mulholland, entrepreneur and founder of 21 Tanks and Missing Link, and then Sandra, Stacey, project manager at Missing Link, joining us for a more creative look at worker happiness. Thank you so much for joining us this week. So it's a happy Friday, Mark. Thanks for introducing this topic, and very important in this world where people are wanting flexible working hours and they're wanting to get, I suppose, contentedness out of work.
Sure. I mean, look, when the story first got pitched to me, I have to be honest, I was incredibly cynical. The idea of a happy workforce, okay, I get the gist of it is cool and it sounds nice, but you worry about, oh, this is a bit soft and fluffy, and what does it actually mean for it? And I think that we all see Google has a fantastic office, and you've got slides and swings and all the fine things there. But you argue, well, cool, they've got money, they can, it's just a little bit of a marketing spiel for it. But what the story did was actually unpacked why there's a value in a happy workforce. And I think you've got to kind of separate from a workforce where everybody's mates. I mean, Richard and I were just chatting just off air, this idea of, are your employees your mates? You spend 80% of the time with them. Mm-hmm. How do you treat them? Do you treat them co-workers as mates, and then as a manager, do you end up treating them as mates, or how do you manage that distinction? Mm-hmm. And I think that the idea was you can actually build a happy workforce, more productive, they work longer, they work harder, they come up with better ideas if they are happy, but it's a case of being able to differentiate and distinguish what part of your workforce you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Stacey, you're sitting next to your boss today, and of course we'll talk about what you do at the company to create a happy workforce. But firstly, tell us about what 21 Tanks does.
So 21 Tanks is an innovation lab. We're out there trying to make people think about things in a different way and get businesses unstuck from the growth patterns they're currently in.
Mm-hmm. So how do you do that? I mean, how do you go into a business and, what is the kind of first approach you have to unearthing what is making people unhappy in a workforce?
Okay, so we wouldn't traditionally be focusing just on what makes people happy or unhappy. That's not really our thing. That may be an objective. But our thing is to let people look at their businesses in a different way. Mm-hmm. And that's what they have to do. They have to be able to look at their business with outsiders' eyes. With regards to the happiness aspect, this is relatively simple. You have to go in and remove unhappiness. There's not a golden formula for this. Job number one is what pisses you off, and how do you take that out of your day-to-day. Mm-hmm. And if you can start off with that, then that's a good place to be.
So you remove all the pain for workers?
I hate to oversimplify it, but yes, that's the key. And not all the pain. I want to still grind it a little bit, but
it sounds simple, but it's not that simple. Your thoughts, Jessica?
Yeah, I was going to say, just maybe throwing a quick one to Rich, but here, I mean, how do you actually manage it though? So somebody comes in, they see a happy workforce, they see, we can use the example of slides in the workplace, etc. But that's a front-facing thing. It's not the cog in the kind of the behind the scenes that actually is driving the workforce. How do you distinguish between what people are seeing on the outside, which could look like a free-for-all, versus what's actually happening inside the business?
Well, okay, so the first thing is the novelty wears off very quickly. You can have a treehouse and a slide, but that's going to make you excited for a week, and then thereafter it's just work, right? If you want to be happy, you have to be happy in what you're doing. You have to realize what you're doing has purpose. Mm-hmm. So when you have somebody come back and tell you about the work you did for them and how amazing it was, and when our guys realize how important what they do actually is, that's a great start to being happy. When you go home and you think like, wow, I actually did something today, I made a difference. I think that's a key ingredient. And so everybody's got a purpose, but not everyone is reminded of it very often, and I think that is an important part.
I think what came out of the article, and this was based on Richard's comments as well, is that people place too much emphasis on, I've got to find out what my true calling in life is, I've got to find my purpose. But if we can just start out with making the actual working environment a pleasant place to be and make people look forward to being at work, then they have a better chance of actually finding that purpose and sort of getting comfortable in that role. So I think starting with the environment, which you have created at 21 Tanks and Missing Links. I've visited your offices. It's a great place to be, and I didn't want to leave personally. It was just funky, and I think that's what CEOs and managers need to focus on. Make the environment a good place to be.
Okay, I have a question there for Sandra. So now you're a would-be employee. You come into the business. It looks like it's cool, and you think, cool, okay, this is a place that I want to work for. What is it that made that a compelling place to go and work? When you were being interviewed, what is it that kind of, because I think it's one of the issues that managers face, is they sit there and they look at how do I attract the best talent? So you suddenly find somebody who's enthusiastic, but what is it that kind of sold it for you?
Well, what really sold it for me was the fact that when I went to Missing Link, this is my first job, and I didn't have really any experience. And Rich, I'd been there for an internship for about a month, and when they sat down and said, right, we would like to offer you a job, you don't quite have the expertise or the experience, but what you do have is the attitude, and that's what we love. And that's what I loved, is the fact that even though I didn't maybe have the experience, they wanted to take the chance on me because I had a really rad attitude. And that's what it's about. It's about appreciating the little things, and an attitude, a simple positive attitude, and my enthusiasm. And that's why I got hired, and that's what I thought, wow, this is awesome.
So, I mean, that also goes to the issue of what you do with the bad apples, as they're sometimes termed in an organization, what you do with the cynics. Do you work on their attitude? Do you weed them out? I mean, what's your approach and what would your advice be there?
Well, job number one is you deserve the people you've got, right? So you hired them, you deal with them. So the first of all is there's no complaining about it. You have to deal with it, but you owe it to everybody to deal with it. A bad apple doesn't just bother you, the business owner, the manager. They bother every person that they work around, and they remove that purpose from everyone by belittling the purpose, the job, the things they do. So job number one, deal with it. I don't care how you do it, but deal with it. Job number two is if you build an environment where you choose the right people in the first place, you have a lot less bad apples, and more importantly, they tend to work themselves out. Because when you've got such a community, the one person in that community who doesn't fit will realize that straight away, and they will either leave on their own accord, or they'll almost be forced out by the environment. When you take a lot of thought into choosing your people wisely, and that's where it happens. You make your money on a house when you buy the house, not when you sell the house. You make the decision on the people when you hire them, not when you get them through the training process.
What do you do? Put people through personality tests? I mean, what's your approach to making sure that you're hiring someone who's positive, optimistic, someone who's going to see the world as glass half full?
Well, you ask them questions, and what we do is we don't hire them. We say to them, come in and spend some time with us. Come in and sit around. Let's see if you like us. Let's see if we like you. We're certainly not for everyone. I swear like a trooper. You must see my internal engine trying to hold me back right now. But and then you sit and you work with people, and after a month, you may look at them and think, wow, they're not the best at what they do, but man, I could dig working with that person every day.
Yeah.
What a great foundation, because you can build on the talent, especially if you've got great enthusiastic people who want to teach. So that is the job. Don't make your decision on an interview, and don't hire people because they've got a great CV. Hire people based on the same criteria you'd invite them over to dinner for a dinner party. You never look at somebody's qualifications and say, okay, well, you're in. You hire them because because they're interesting and you want to spend time with them, and that's what you have to do with people at work as well.
How do you fake happiness though? So Rich said you could fake being enthusiastic about you, or fake happiness in the article. How do you fake happiness at work? Because there are plenty of times where people come to work and they don't feel like actually faking it. They don't feel it. How do you fake it and still be able to keep the enthusiasm going the whole time?
I think people forget at the end of the day that happiness is a choice. It's a choice that you make to wake up every morning, have a positive attitude and have a positive approach. And that's just the type of person I am. We talk about this happy environment, but a happy environment at work can also go so far that it's 50-50 as far as I'm concerned. You also need to come into work every day with a positive attitude and a positive outlook, and it is hard, and we're in a very stressful environment. It's high pressure, it's deadline driven, but I think you've got to make the choice to be positive. You've got to make the choice to be happy, and that's a personal choice that you make. And when you have an environment that's conducive to a happy working space, and you're also happy on top of that, I mean, it's a place where magic can happen.
Okay, but then I got a question. Are you looking beyond this job? Is looking beyond this job the thing that makes you enthusiastic about going to work? Because
we can also ask Jessica that question and put her on the spot.
but I do believe, I think the problem with a lot of the workforce at the moment is that they get so used to a job, and then they're never looking to move beyond. And I think that the thing that actually motivates a lot of people is the fact that they're aiming for something beyond where they are at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. But right now what I'm just trying to do at Missing Link is I'm trying to push myself and push my boundaries at Missing Link in the space that I'm in. I think it's really important to live every day in the present, and so I'm not really looking too much ahead right now. I'm just saying, how can I be the best that I can be in this job right now with what I'm learning? And my goodness, do I learn something new every day?
I mean, just looking at the numbers, let's just take it back to some of the research. Google, of course, is the prime example we brought up. Hey Group shows that happy people are 43% more productive. Gallup survey shows that happy companies are 33% more profitable. So we're bringing it back to this question around personal growth and bettering yourself and seeing beyond just what you're doing at that point in time. So how do you incorporate that focus in terms of ambition, personal growth for employees within the company? Is that something that's core to creating a happy workforce?
Okay, so remember, doing well at your job and doing well at what you do is part of your career path. So if I enjoy what I'm doing and I'm productive at it, I feel great about myself. The end result for the company is the company reaps all the benefits of that. Okay, so you're playing with people's ambition here. If you've hired the right person, they will measure how happy they are based on how far they can grow and achieve within a business or within a construct. And so if you can create the formula for that to happen, as the employer, you reap all the benefits of that. Well, they get the benefit too, but you get all the flip side. So you've got people who are working harder, trying to drive themselves, trying to push further, push harder, do better. Your clients are the ones who sit there and see the end results of that, and you as a shareholder is the one who gets to take that home. It is a great link.
So practically, does it become a dialogue and an ongoing dialogue between what are your ambitions? Do you feel that the work you're doing every day is helping you grow and helping you achieve what you'd like to in your career? I mean, do you need to have a formal process in place for every employer to understand that those ambitions?
Yes, and we do. So our performance criteria is not based on animate faster or make a video better. It's based on what you want to achieve as a person. So for example, last year we paid our bonuses to guys who did a personal best squat or X amount of burpees or read 3 novels and things like that. Like, we don't mind. You define your objective. We'll work out how we get you there. And again, you can't have a great life and a crappy work life. You've got to have some sort of balance there. So if you're always looking at the person holistically and trying to build them as a person, a complete person, rather than just the little chunk that you're hoping to leech from, well, then you're going to be better off in the end result. If you build the whole person, you get the whole profit.
I think what's coming out very strongly from this and from Rich's comments is there needs to be an appreciation of the individual. So what are the individual's goals? What are their personal preferences for how they like to work, who they like to work with, where they like to work from? So companies can no longer take this approach of everyone needs to be treated the same. It's that old thing of just being a number. Companies that take that approach, we're starting to see that people leave. They don't attract the best talent. So it's an appreciation of the individual and finding ways to work with them.
So I've got a question. I'll call it manager's prerogative, and I'll put the employee and then the employer first. Okay, so Jack Welch says to you, 10% of your staff, you should turn over 10% of your staff each year. The bottom 10%, you should roll them over. So if you were working as an employee in a business where the manager said to you, 10% of you won't be here in 12 months' time, do you think it would create a positive or a negative working environment?
Depending on if you want to stay there or not, I suppose. So
would it incentivize you to be more productive, or do you think it would feel like an axe constantly hanging over your head?
I think it could work as both. It depends on the type of person you are. You could look at it as and say, you know what, I want to stay here next year. I'm going to work my butt off to make sure I am here. Or, you know what, if they want me to go, then I'm going to go. It really comes down again to an attitude.
I think that's negative motivation.
Well, that's my question. So, I mean, if you were going to...
Okay, so... in a smaller business is fundamentally different. Jack Welch can say that because they're not people, right? Sure. They are employee numbers, and it's very easy to work through that as it is a human resource in the true sense of the word. In a small business, it's not the same. However, I do believe 10% of the people should leave every year, but I believe they should leave of their own accord. If you've been in a business for a certain period of time, it's time for everybody. You know, you go to one school for a certain period of time, you go to one club, we have one hobby, and work is the same. This idea of lifers is probably gone. The idea of people staying. So I encourage our guys. Our guys have a thing that's called, it's basically a play on 10% time, but slightly different. If somebody can come up with a business plan for a business they want to write, and they sit there and they put it in place, they can take Fridays off for 6 months until they've started their business. And guys have done it and been competitors to us, but we still allow it. That's still the purpose, because if they're ready to go and want to leave, the worst thing you can do is try and hold them back.
You speak a lot to corporates, though. I mean, do you think corporates are buying into this idea that they can have a dynamic workforce? Because I think it's very, to your point, is a General Electric can kind of look at everybody as a human resource and not individuals. are South African businesses actually getting to the point where they can treat businesses or employees as a dynamic resource?
No. South African business, the problem with, I don't think this is South African business, I think this is big business in general, is the business of business is getting far in business. So what you have is you have a workforce, a group of people who are actually measuring how they do based on how far they get, not on often how much greatness they've done. And I think there are huge exceptions. A number of my clients are completely the opposite. But the problem is, if you're just trying to climb a ladder, climb a rung, then it's not actually about the work you do, it's about how I get to the next rung. And so they almost motivate the wrong behavior. And I think that's the problem. We have to be okay with people coming in and going out and coming back again.
But as a CEO, how would you begin to change the culture? Does it need to come from you? Does it need to come from management? Where do you start?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the job of creating a culture in an organization can only flow down. I've seen companies try to do these culture workshops from the ground up and they don't work. It has to start. You have to give permission, right? So, and that's all you have to do. And then you have to lead by example.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting as you say, don't hold too tightly. And just one last thing I want to ask you. Sweating the assets is quite a common term that is used at the moment. People trying to cut costs and trying to do more with less. Should that term be banned in the workplace? Should it be banned at boardroom level?
No, certainly not. We're still trying to run a business. I still want to retire and live a great life. But no, I think, but you got to sweat the correct assets. So I think the things that some people see as soft issues are not as soft as they think they are. And I think if you try to look at the number of things we've done, even just creating, say, Missing Links office, I think we spent $1 million on it. That's the cheapest marketing I have ever spent in my life. And people would say, oh, but you're wasting money on the soft stuff. This is cold, hard cash coming back to us in terms of the publicity we get. And yet they'll spend money on other things. There's just a check in a box that they see as business imperatives, which I don't see the same way. So I think we have to reassess how we make this up.
Yeah.
And apply new rules and then sweat the assets. But they're not the same assets we've always sweated before.